Welcome to this HelloID webinar brought to you by Tools Forever. Today we'd like to give you an overview of the new functionality in HelloID. We encourage you to ask questions. You can do this via the WebEx chat option. You can find the option here. At the end of the demonstration, your questions will be answered. I'd like to turn this over to Tjeerd Seinen, HelloID Product Manager. He will explain and demonstrate the new HelloID functionality. Enjoy, and don't forget to post the questions.
Jamie, thank you for the introduction. Welcome all today. Today I'd like to give you the information feature updates on 4.8. That's the version released last Sunday. And today again I'd like to go through a PowerPoint presentation explaining the functionality that has been released last Sunday, 4.8, and give you a heads up on 4.9 that will be released end of September. Okay, first I'd like to run through the PowerPoint presentation and then of course I'd like to demo the software. So the contents of this webinar is that I'd like to explain new functionality and I'd also like to demo it. That's workflow management. That was already part of the product, but it was relatively simple, and now we have extended that heavily. And of course I'd like to give the heads up of the next release, 4.9, end of September. Okay, workflow management. We basically have done, we have created different workflow types. We have created the any, the sequential and the all, and I'd like to give some details about that in this presentation. And I'd like to show you how you can configure the workflows. So first, a couple of slides covering these topics. So we have three types, the any, the all, and the sequential. I first like to give you a short introduction on what we have on any. If you have a person, an employee in the organization that wants to have, for example, request access to Photoshop, then he can, if that's the any type, he can request any of these people can give an approval for his request. So it's any of them can give an approval. So if one of them gives an approval, then the request is approved and then the person will get access to Photoshop. So it's any of the approvers. And of course you can specify as many approvers as you like. It can be only one, but in this example there are three. The manager of the person, the owner of the product, or one of the people from the IT department. It can be a group, and I will give a little bit more heads up information about that in a couple of slides later on. So for any workflow type, if it's any, all, or sequential, you have different options. So there can be the mail, that I think you already be aware of, that the approver will get an email that the requester wants to have access. So it's just an email system. Then you don't have to go to the HelloID portal, but you can approve or deny the request straight from your email box. And of course I will show you later on how that looks like. There is also a reminder mechanism. So if none of the approvers actually is not responding, does not approve or deny, they will be reminded. And you can set that for a day or a couple of days, so to be sure that the approve or the request is actually being handled. You also have the auto deny and auto approve, so you can set a specific time frame until you wait until the request needs to go through this whole process. And you can delegate. So one of the approvers can delegate his approval to somebody else. Very obvious examples that the manager wants to delegate the approval to the assistant. Here, self-service, all this functionality is part of the self-service module in HelloID. So it's not part of access management or provisioning, so it's only part of self-service. Okay, so this is the any workflow type, the any. The options do apply for any type of workflow. So the next one is all, and now you can say same requests, and now all of these must approve. So it's not one of them, but all need to give their approval. And then the request is being approved. Again, all the options like remind, auto deny, etc. are applicable. If one of them denies, then the approver, the request is being denied. So even if these are approved, But since all of them needs to approve, and if one of them denies, then the request is denied. The next type is sequential. So it's the any or all, and this is the sequential. And this is same request, and now it's following a sequence of steps. So first the manager needs to approve, then the product owner, that can be the owner of the Photoshop product, and then again somebody from the IT department. But then if this is not being approved, then they don't see anything. So they only will see the request if that's being approved, in this case by the manager. Then it's approved, and if one of them denies, again, then the request is denied. Okay, so how you can configure this. And the major important thing with workflows is that the organization changes all the time. There are new departments, new people working for departments, manager relationship is changing, and you don't want to update the workflow all the time. So you want to specify the workflow, you want to determine how the workflow flows through the organization, but you don't want to constantly configure the workflow. So that needs to be maintenance free. So how do we do that? We have introduced a number of aspects in HelloID to help you to create a zero maintenance free configuration of your workflow. So for example, if you look at the manager relationship, so if the requester needs to get an approval from the manager, you don't want to hard code that. Of course you can hard code that in the workflow, but that's not the best thing to do. It's better to retrieve that relationship, for example, from the HR system or another system that is logically to get that information from the HR system. Same thing for the product owner. The product owner, you don't want to update that manually in HelloID. You want to retrieve that, for example, from the Active Directory. So if Photoshop is being managed by an application group, you can use, for example, the managed by field from that group to set that as the product owner. The more advanced is this one. You can, for the IT department, then of course there can be a number of sysadmins, and you want to have one of these sysadmins want to be an approver, and then you can use a group. You can use an internal HelloID group, but you can also connect that to an Active Directory group. Most likely you already have an Active Directory group containing all the sysadmins working for your IT department. Then you only have to connect that group to the workflow. And of course, then again, it's zero free maintenance. The most advanced option is the filters. And then you actually can specify a dynamic filter. We name that scopes in the HelloID product. And today it's only you can use that in the workflows, but we will extend that use broader in the product. But for now, the filters can be used, and I will show you how powerful it is. And you can specify the source of information from any system. So, for example, you can specify a filter based on information from the HR system. So you can say all the people that have a valid contract in the HR system, that will be part of the dynamic group or the scope group in HelloID. But you can also retrieve information from the Active Directory. Perhaps the job title is in the attribute of a user, and then you can filter all the users in the Active Directory having a job title like sysadmin. Well, same story again and again. You can also, of course, retrieve that information from a help desk system, perhaps where the sysadmins are being defined as a group as well. Okay, so this is all maintenance free, set and forget. That's the main purpose on how to configure the workflows in HelloID. So let me demo this functionality. So the first thing I'd like to show you is the end result. So how the end user can request and approve under request. And then I'll show you the configuration. So first let me exit this PowerPoint presentation and go through the end user. So I'm logging in as myself, Tjeerd Seinen, and going to the self-service portal to request a product. So let me use the exact same situation as in the PowerPoint presentation, is to request access to Photoshop. So here and of course you can see I've done it a couple of times in the past. I can request access to Photoshop, and I request that for a couple of days, and need this for ABC project. And now I request, and the request is going to be sent to my manager, because this is going to be a 3-step sequential workflow. Close the request, and here I can see, just need to refresh, it's pending for an approval. So I can see that it is pending for approval. I can also show the details and see what the status of my request is. So now let me switch over to the manager. So this is my manager, that's Koos. And in the inbox of Koos I can see that there is a product request. There is probably also an email. That's this email. Tjeerd is requesting access to Photoshop. So I can also approve it from here, but also from the inbox in the HelloID portal. So let me, and the other one is also here as a notification. So I can also straight approve it from the notification bar. And another option is that I can also delegate it to somebody else. So Stella Sanderberger, that's my delegate, also received this request, and Stella can also approve this request. So go back to the inbox, and now I will approve it straight from the inbox, and I say this is okay for this project ABC. And now I give my approval. And then I see it is changing from open to pending, and it's a pending approval, and it will go through the next approver, and that's going to be Walter. So this is, I need this for ABC project. It was the initial request by Tjeerd by myself. It's being approved. So let's go back, let's go to the next step, and that's Walter. So here is Walter. You can again see, of course, in the inbox. Here's the inbox request, and here it's also from the email. So let me approve this from the email. So I can also see that Tjeerd has requested it, Koos has approved it, but I think, well, this is a little bit too long, just I say I give this only for a couple of days. It's okay, but not for so long. So now I approve, and now it's done. The whole sequence is being approved, and now Tjeerd are going to have access to Photoshop. Now the whole sequence is done. Now let me go to the admin portal and show you how you can configure this. So I first go to Selfservice and to the products, and let me look up the Adobe product. So this is new, approval workflows, and I can select here one of the workflows I have configured or have defined. Here is the section approval workflows, and in this section I can see that the available workflows, 3 approvers, that was the one I was been using, and this is the approval. So this is sequential, all users must approve in sequence. These are the 3 different workflow types. So I've said that all users must approve in sequence. So first the manager, then the resource owner, and then one of the people from the IT department. So that's basically the sequence of the workflow. And this is a keyword. So here you can see, if I need to remove that one, here I can say I want to specify, I want to add the manager, and I can change the sequence of the workflow very easily. So I want to specify that, use that one as the last one. Okay, so this is my manager. This is the resource owner. That's this Walter Dame. And this is the IT department. And this is the filter mechanism that I explained in my PowerPoint presentation. And this is a powerful mechanism. I can just see that one person is part of this group. And if I want to change that, I can go here. then it changes the scope of the filter. And this is a combo select on all the information that is available in the IDP. And of course that information can come from Active Directory or all sorts of other sources. So let me use the department, and here I can see all the possible values for the department. Better to use, for example, title. I think that. So these are all the possible titles in my system. So let me say I want to use the sysadmin, and I can also use additional filters I can use, and these are AND statements, so I can make this filter more specific. I do save, and now I have a lot more people. In the previous filter there was only one person, now there are even more than 6. So now one of these 6 people or even more need to give their approval. So now you can see how easy it is to change the scope of that dynamic group. So another option you have is you can type any group here. So I can just start typing, and then I select perhaps a direct user, hard-coded then, but I can also select a group. So instead of having my direct manager, I can say I want to have one of the managers to make the selection. So let me restore my situation. I think the other ones are actually quite easy, is that you can say I want to have a reminder, is that if an approver does not respond, I can remind him or her about this is the connected products, and there is also automatically the action. This is the auto approve and the auto deny. Okay, I think that's very powerful new workflow management functionality. And okay, let me know if you have any questions, and I will answer the questions at the end of this webinar. Okay, let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation, and let's talk a little bit about the new upcoming functionality in the next release. That's going to be, so that was the initial sheet, and let me turn on the pointer here. So let me give a heads up on the next release, the 4.9 release, that's going to be released end of September, to be exact the 30th of September. So what will be in 4.9? And that's fine-grained events. And what are fine-grained events? Let me explain that first, and then show you the new functionality. And I will show you the new functionality by using screenshots. I don't know if you remember this conceptual diagram. I used that before for the mapper to explain this section of our software. And these are the events. So as soon as something is happening in the HelloID vault, or perhaps a folder is created or something is changed in a group, but especially something is happening in the vault, then events are occurring, created, updated and deleted. And this is the area that we have refined, and that's the area where the fine-grained events are being added. So let me show you, this is the current situation. If you go to, in the admin portal, you go to the events section. These are all the events that can occur in HelloID, and then you can connect actions to it. So for example, this is this area, the created, updated and deleted is exactly this area. So if there is a created event, then these 2 actions will be executed. If there is an updated event, then these actions will be executed. Really simple, straightforward. So there is an event, an updated event, then these actions will be executed. And this is the area that we have modified, that's going to be modified or extended. It's basically the same setup. Something will happen in a person, in the vault, but it can also happen on groups or IDP users, or something on the data share management area, the folder. So, for example, something happens in the folder, and there are events, still the same as the mechanism today, and actions are going to be executed. So what is new? this area here is new. So now you can edit what is actually when this event is going to execute this action. And you can also add events. So where in the old situation was only one event, now you can specify more. And so let me add a new event. And now I can also specify conditions when that action, so I can specify here the conditions when this action is going to be executed. And that's fine-grained, and that's a fine-grained mechanism to specify when an action needs to occur. And that's going to be more specific. When in the old situation I can only say, well, if a created event, then a couple of actions need to be executed. Now I can set conditions. So now you can say the creation of an Active Directory account is only going to occur if the contract is active. So that's an additional condition, and that's here. And that gives, of course, a lot more power in how the whole provisioning process should behave. And now there are some other interesting areas here as well. I can switch here with switching back to code. So this is a visual representation, but I can also switch to a more powerful mechanism to use actually JavaScript code. That's more powerful than this area. This is easier to read. This is more powerful. I can also view, I can use an example user, and I can show the new and old object. And then I can actually see how the event is going to be triggered. So these are, of course, the information. And here I can see an example user, how that's going to be triggered. And I can easily see here if it's going to be triggered or not based on this data. And it gives it, that's a very powerful option to see what's going on, to debug, and to specify your conditions for the provisioning process by just selecting an example user. I can select any user I like in this selection box. Are there any questions? I think the Finegrained event is very powerful. I'm looking very forward to demo that to you by the end of this month. And then, of course, I will give another webinar. So, are there any questions? Jamie?
Thanks, Jared. Looks like we do have a few questions coming in. Number 1, can I use this feature with a form to create a user in Active Directory?
No, this is not possible yet. The thing that you're asking for is now I've demoed it in combination with a product request. But one of the things that's later on the roadmap is that you can create dynamic forms, and then perhaps you want to have a multiple step form. So, for example, you want to start at the HR department. The HR department fills in a couple of details, and then the next step in the workflow. So then you make a combination between the form and a workflow. That a manager is going to fill in some extra information, and then, for example, IT department. So they have 3 steps, starting at HR, manager, IT department, and then the form filling in information about the creation of a new account is a multi-step. It's basically also a workflow. That is not available, and the forms are going to be delivered end of the year, and then we're going to cross-combine that with workflows. Thank you for your question.
Second question we have, is it possible to use workflows in a combination with provisioning?
Interesting question again. No, that's also not possible. That will be beginning of next year, 2019. And then you can say, okay, I want to start a provisioning process by detecting information in the HR system. And then I want to start a workflow. So perhaps the completion of the creation of the account, or perhaps to add specific permissions to a user account, then you can start a workflow for. But that is not available yet. It's going to be the beginning of next year.
This is a really good question. How can I make sure that not one, but a minimum of 2 people from a group do an approval before continuing to the third approver?
Yes, I agree, Jamie. Interesting question. Let me show you how you can do this in the software. Self-service, approval workflows. And let me use my example approval here. So basically what you're saying, or the question is I like to have a group, let's say the managers. So one of the managers need to give an approval. So I have two, but suppose you want to have, perhaps there are more, but now this example are two. So if this one approves, this one approves, this one approves, but then it's only one in a group. But suppose you want to have two out of a group, then it's easy to specify the group again. So basically what happens now is that one person out of this group, and he remembers who did that, and then that person does not have to approve again, because that will be filtered out in this whole sequence in the workflow. So this is the way how to do this.
The last question I'm showing here is it possible to use provisioning in production?
So the question is if it's possible to use the provisioning technology we have available in HelloID to use that in production. Yes, it is. It is available in the production version of HelloID. However, it's not recommended because we think that the provisioning technology or feature set in HelloID is still too weak, even with the coming release end of September. I think it's good to see the functionality growing in HelloID, and perhaps you can use that for simple cases, but for a full provisioning solution, it's not strong enough. We expect that's going to be strong enough by the end of this year, 2018. Okay, I think, Jamie, these were all the questions. People, thank you for your attention today. It was a little bit longer than normal, this webinar. But I think interesting functionality, and I'm proud that we are able to deliver this functionality, and looking really forward for the Finegrained event by the end of this month. Okay, thank you for your attention, and bye-bye.